everyone. It is your girl Remy, and welcome to season 3 of Self Centered with Remy. I'm super excited to start off this season with you after taking a very long break, I know, since season 2. But the reason for that very long break was because I had to take time to graduate from grad school. I was writing my dissertation, doing experiments, fighting for my life, and I came out on the other side. And I'm super happy to now be Dr. Remy J.T. Shitu. That's for me. And it was an incredible journey, very painful most of the time. But I'm glad to be done and closing that chapter of my life and now opening a new one and being able to go on all of those new adventures, um, and starting my career as a scientist. And so I thought a good way to start all of that off would be to step back in front of the proverbial mic and talk to you all about super exciting things and interesting topics. This season, I'm very excited for all that we're going to talk about and all the guests that I'm going to have. I'm very privileged to know the people that I know and get to talk to them about what they know. And so for today's episode, the first episode, I got to talk to Will Daniels. He is a financial planner that I've known for a very long time, longer than I was expecting. It felt like we met just yesterday, but he's a really interesting guy. We're both from Chicago. And so I kind of asked him to tell me about what he does. I know a little bit about what he does because we do work together in some capacity, but I wanted him to share about himself.
I don't know how much I should share about me, but just a guy, 30 years old, trying to make it happen, own a business. I've known Remy for a little bit of time. Happy to be here. So just glad that I was invited. I've run financial planning practice and wealth management practice for about 6 years now. I'm board certified financial planner. There's just not a lot of people that do what I do. Now that I think about it, there's like 100,000 CFPs on Earth. Now that you've got your PhD and are in a very elite space, right? It's very similar for me. There's 100,000 CFPs on Earth. Like less than 2% of them are black, and less than 5% of them are under 30. So to be in that category in this space is really special. Yeah, no, I'm very grateful for the work that I do, and because of that, primarily 80% of the work that I do is finding successful people and guiding successful people. So I've got folks that I work with that are, in their 20s. I got folks that I work with that are in their 70s and 80s, and I span many generations. Yeah, it's crazy to say it out loud, but I love being around successful people, and learning their stories. And I really enjoy being able to share their perspective with other people so that they can, folks who are, let's say, younger can carry their perspective into the future from someone who's older, right? Because that's the biggest challenge in these days. We don't know what we don't know. So to be able to say, like, man, what's going on down the line or around the corner for me, it's great to be a vessel for stuff like that.
And in addition to talking to me about, specifically what he does, I did not know very much about the financial planning world and what that looks like for him. So he gave us a little bit of a taste of what that looks like.
And then when you're in a space with people who have lived for decades and have very unique experiences, you're like, wow, I'm so much younger than them. But what starts to happen is you find a lot of unique advantages. So, for example, for somebody who's much older, a lot of the times what I'm finding is that they feel really comfortable because of the relationships that we build, that there's a really high probability I'll be around decades in the future for them. Because if somebody's 60, right? Like for example, your advisor or planner is 60 and you're about to retire, what do you think they're doing so? Exactly. Like who's calling you when you're 88 if your advisor is the same age as you? It's a big issue in our industry, which, people are working on, but a big opportunity for me. And I share with folks to say like, yeah, I could be around for, my plan is to literally be around for 3, 4 more decades into the future.
So to start off our conversation, I first asked Will what his definition of success was. I think he's the perfect person to provide input on this because of the people that he works with. He works with a lot of people from different backgrounds who have all different types of definitions of success. And I really liked his answer.
I've been waiting for you to ask me this question, and it's so hard to define. The first thing that comes to mind is really what success is not, if that makes sense. Because I feel like there's a lot of, I don't know if I should say bad definitions of success, but definitions of success I would discourage or encourage people to steer away from. I think success is not external, right? At all. At all. And I feel like that's where a lot of problems are. I was reading a book, one of my favorite finance books, because it's not too finance bro y. It's more about psychology and behavior and people than the money part of it. It's about relationships with money, things like that. It's called The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. Really, really, really quick read, but they talk about um, what happens when people see or buy a really fancy car. Like if you're walking down the street and you see somebody in a really nice car, imagine whatever that car might be. A lot of people are like, man, if I had that car, like I'm living good, right? Everything's working out, and people are gonna see me in the car, like living really well. Like, man, okay, Remy's got it together. But what actually ends up happening is let's say I end up buying that car and you see me. What you don't do is say, wow, Will is in that car. He's living really well, like things are working out. What ends up happening is you envision yourself in that car or a nice car, imagining yourself being seen by others. What we often chase is like this idea of being seen and having that status. But in actuality, when we get there, other people don't even care. They're just like, wow, I can't wait till I get there and get seen by others, which actually never happens. You don't even really. That's why there's so much of a chase. I think is very personal and very internal. A lot of it has to do with fulfillment, right? Personal fulfillment, based on however you might define that. Usually it's related to values, family, faith, fitness, whatever those core things that are really fundamental to you. If you think about like your greatest achievements, whatever it is, they're usually not that great of a time. A lot of the times are really painful. But if we like stepped out of the present and we were like 10 years from now and you thought back onto like this phase, you're probably really proud of yourself and forget a good bit of the pain that you went through. I think that the closer you are to those things, whether it be some type of growth personally, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, whatever the case may be, and you feel like very successful. Like, wow, I accomplished that thing that I set out to do while I was being really present, that was really difficult, that I had to grow into, that I had to grow through. You know what I mean?
And while we were talking about our definitions of success, of course, growth comes up. Growth is one of those things that I think we talk about a lot, but not everybody really understands what growth is going to look like. It's not all kumbaya, incense, and meditation. I think that a lot of times growth can be quite painful. And as we discussed it, he brought up some really interesting points about growth.
Success requires growth. People are not going to like this. I'm so sorry. I don't believe it's possible to grow without obstacles, without challenges. Also, don't think that people are ever fulfilled without having overcome, accomplished, persevered through obstacles either. Think about it though, because a lot of people, it's tough too in our generation. I don't like comparing other generations and stuff like that, but this is an era where stuff just is changing really fast all the time. Like I feel like we just wake up and we're like, oh man, something new, huh? This new global thing, right? Every 3 days. It's insane. And so it's really easy to take that and say, man, I remember the good old days, or life would be better without this change, without this obstacle, without this challenge. But at the same time, if it weren't for the challenge and if it weren't for the perseverance, if it weren't for the problem solving, how else could you grow to understand how to use a certain tool or build a certain tool personally to become the person that you needed to be?
as we talked more about obstacles, one of the things that came up is overcoming said obstacles. When we think about growth and adversity and overcoming those things that are difficult, of course, sometimes growing doesn't look as glamorous as it does like on TV, but showing up every day a lot of times is the key. I think the queen of consistency, the queen of the internet, the queen of all things great. Of course, Beyonce was going to come up. I'm a super fan. Beyonce has a really great way of being consistent, but over not just days, weeks, but she's been consistent at her craft over years and decades. Beyonce doesn't become Beyonce by showing up one day and being great. She's grown into the megastar that she is over, like I said, years and decades. And so, as we were talking about consistency and what that looks like, naturally we turned to one of the greatest examples of consistency.
Right. Yeah, yeah. No, no. I mean, it's a good example. I mean, the work that she had to put in, and that's where a lot of the success lies. Like when you're working out, if it's like weight training related, like your muscles are ripping, and if it weren't for them ripping, they can't repair and rebuild stronger, so that you rebuild a stronger version. And that's how Beyonce trained. She would train like ridiculous for the stuff that she does. But if it weren't for her building those layers of armor, right, which is incredibly painful, she would not have, be the person that she is. And I can guarantee you the process of the growth, the training, the development, the pain, so to speak, is what one of the things she's probably most proud of. Her and Serena Williams is a great example too. One of the greatest examples I could think of, now that you mentioned like Beyonce, of someone who just over and over and over continued to work and build at something until it was this magnificent thing that we saw. But another aspect of success that people, I think, and when I think of like the highest levels of success, is mastery, right? In the mastery personally of something. It doesn't even of some pursuit. It doesn't even really matter what it is, and the fulfillment that you get from it, because it requires so much consistency. Like most successful people that I have ever met are also the most consistent people I have ever met at whatever they're doing, right? Like if they're not the type of people, and it kind of, because, and I'm bringing this up because of the era that we're in, the environment that we're in, where things change all of the time, so many new ideas, there's so much that can be done. It's easy to start something. It's so easy relative to other eras, generations, in my opinion. It's really easy to start. Information is everywhere, ideas. You just snap your fingers, chat GPT, whatever Claude is gonna say, hey, this is exactly what we gotta do, right? But the idea of mastery and the fulfillment that you get from it is not about the end destination. It's about the journey along the day and the consistency day after day after day. And another thing people don't want to hear, the people more than likely that are the most successful in whatever the thing, industry, space, whatever, are the people that have done it probably the longest, not have spent the most time in the space, have spent the most consistent time being masterful over and over and over. Like you mentioned athletics, we see the game, right? That's what comes on in the evenings when we watch. We don't watch practice. And when I mention mastery, I'm particularly talking about the people that practice the most, not the people that play the most games. And that's not something, nobody wants to do that, right? It takes a tremendous amount of focus to say, you know what, I'm going to work on this little tiny microscopic thing that's a small tweak, but I'm not going to do it just once. I'm going to do it 1,000 times until it becomes muscle memory and I can never forget it. Because the next person, when they're called to do something and the opportunity pops up and Claude says blah 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 blah, that'll be their first rep, and that'll be live TV. But for me, this is the 1,001th time I've done the one microscopic thing that to you looks insignificant, but to me, right, or whatever my space, changes the world. It's uncomfortable, often terrifying, and you suck at it, right? And in our brain, there's a lot of bad wiring in our brain naturally that if we don't face as human beings, understand and rewire are not helpful for success. But like some of those things, discomfort in a survival mode means you need to do something else, right? Fear in survival mode means, hey, if you keep doing this thing or if you get closer to this thing, it may end terribly for you. So on and so forth. Yet if you actually do it a little bit more, if you lean into it a little bit more, if you do it a little bit harder or a little bit more consistent, everything that you aspire to, if this is a really important goal for you, is actually on the other side of that thing. Yet your natural mind is going to say, whoo, you should not be doing this. You should not be doing this. You should not be doing this. And you need to tell yourself to shut up and just do the thing over and over and over when nobody else, no, like no one else is doing it. You don't want to do it. And people are like, why are you doing it? Right?
As we spoke about consistency and showing up in the spaces that you want to be in, one of the things that naturally came up, which is kind of an opposite idea, is this concept of adaptability. I think a lot of times when successful people get up and talk about how they've become successful, they talk about being adaptable. Well, if you must be consistent and you must show up day in and day out, how can you also be adaptable? I think for me, reflecting on being successful within grad school, within the academic space, consistency is I show up to lab every day and I give it my best every day. Not saying that it's going to be 100% every day. Some days are 50%, but putting in work every day, chipping away at your goal every day is a consistency piece. But the ultimate determinant of success, at least within my space, is your ability to adapt to a problem. You show up, you run the experiment fails. What do you do? Do you come in and do the same thing again? No, you have to figure out a way forward. Figure out how you are going to adapt to this problem by still showing up. Sometimes that means learning to adjust your problem solving and thinking outside of the box in order to solve the problem so that you can continue to move forward. A lot of times it is not always going through the obstacle or going over the obstacle. Maybe sometimes you need to go around. And sometimes you have to take a detour that takes you somewhere that you don't necessarily want to go. So, as we talked about adaptability, obviously you as the person going through the growth on your way to becoming successful, you can't always adapt. Sometimes you get frustrated. And in those times, what do you do? I think a lot of times for me, I've learned to lean on my community. Who is it that is around you that helps you during those very low moments? How do you cultivate success within your village, within the people that carry that burden with you? And when I asked Will about this, he had a very interesting perspective that I really enjoyed.
You're bringing up again a lot of really good points that I see about adaptability. Of course, you can't just keep doing the same thing over and over. And I can imagine there's a lot of people out there that either currently feel like this or almost everybody has felt that way in the past in general. What I see from successful people about that is about, yes, adaptability, but what can help is your environment. When I think about the most impactful innovations, accomplishments, they're usually done in teams. And that's not on accident. That's very purposeful. Not just because people have different skill sets, right? It's also because of just dynamics with other people. Like if you want to go, what's the African proverb? If you want to walk fast, walk alone, but if you want to walk far, walk together, right? That is purposeful. I mean, you think about like the NBA finals or putting a man on the moon or whatever the case may be, like doing it together is incredibly important because of those downtimes. So as a teammate, let's say we're moving forward for accomplishing whatever that same objective, I can help you out and say, "Hey, listen, I can see like slightly a different angle than you can around the corner, so on and so forth. Have you thought about this?" Right? To help you out. And that could be another person. It could be just from physically being in another environment or eliminating certain distractions or obstacles. But when you're in a good environment of people, or physically, or mentally, or spiritually, successful people love being in great environments because it attracts the solutions to get there more often than not. Successful people have a really strong energy for attraction. They don't just like break stuff down and build stuff up. They attract a lot of the answers that they're looking for from friends, from family, from being in the right location, from stepping out of the house, from being in uncomfortable places, from trying the new thing. You get closer to this environment where somebody might say, or the idea might pop up to say, well, wait a minute, I didn't think about this point of view before because I was stuck in this small place by myself that was dark where I could only see the small point of view. Now I get a bigger picture, or someone else helped me out to lift me up. And that's really important too.
And as we talked about community and cultivating success within our communities, and how successful people attract other successful people, and groups of successful people will attract awesome opportunities for not only themselves but everybody in the community, we naturally talked about the attitudes of those. Values are something that are really important to me. Um, my community is filled with people who value similar things that I do. We don't all have the same opinions. It's certainly not an echo chamber. But I think it's important to have people that will lift you up, as opposed to pulling you back down when you're low. You don't want people who are going to add on to that. And I think, who are the people that you need to have around you in order to generate and cultivate success in your life? And Will gave me some nuggets that I hadn't heard in a long time, that made me think about who I have around me and who I want to have around me.
Especially because, like, a lot of the times when we think about like the crabs in a barrel mentality and people having ill intent, they're like, oh, that's why they told me that. Those aren't the most damaging people, because a lot of the times you can like hear and know, like, oh my goodness, they don't care about me when they're doing this. Usually the people that are most damaging are the people that do care about you, and they give you advice to say, hey, listen, this is painful for you. This is fearful for you. This is uncomfortable for this is repetitive for you. You're really trying and practicing for, morning, noon, night. I think you should stop because I care about you. Yet at the same time, we don't, I don't know if we are translating well or understand that, hey, listen, my goal, my vision, my values are to get over here, and yours are over here. Not right, wrong, it's just different. And if I am accepting that, it can throw me off, right? It can throw us off on our journey because we're getting good advice from the wrong people or at the wrong time. If I could, interject a one tangible takeaway I like to think about when it comes to success, particularly because we're talking about who, which is one of the most important components of success, is just the people you're around, as you're saying. My managing partner always says that you need to have three types of people in your life, and you've talked about them all. The first is somebody like a mentor, somebody that you can learn from. And that person, right, must be doing or have done the thing that you are trying to do. My goodness. There's a lot of coaches out here and it's not a lot of players, right? Like, we really should be taking advice from the people that have walked that path, successfully, or down the line, have been in the shoes in their own, right? The mentors are really important. It could be, people down the line, work wise, family wise, spirituality wise, whatever that might be. The second, because you're talking about like that example of, man, my friend helped me with that out of box type of idea. You got to have people that you're running with as peers, like people that are also in the race, in the game, on the team, or doing their own thing and working hard similarly, even if it's a little bit different, so that you can come to them and lean on them and they can lean on you when things get difficult. It's really difficult to do stuff by yourself, particularly in those times where it's painful.
And as we talked about the people that you should have around you, the third type of person was definitely someone that I was not initially expecting. I think when we think about who you should have around you, it should be all people that you can learn from, can boost you up. Like we talk about sponsors and advocates and mentors. But I think his perspective on the third type of person, somebody that you can pour into, as he puts it, is really special. As a graduate student, I'm surrounded by other grad students who are peers, by postdocs and faculty, people who serve as mentors for me. But I think a lot of times we forget that the ultimate way to learn is to teach, to pour back into someone else, to pull other people up as you are going along so that the quote unquote pipeline doesn't run dry.
And the third is somebody that you can pour into. I think it's not talked about a lot, but I think my take, and if I'm wrong, oops, I think my take about that has to do with mastery. It's really the teacher that learns the most. If I can help someone with whatever their path might be, and I'm coaching and I'm helping with point of views or whatever, like I've really got to make sure I'm mastering whatever that thing is to be able to share for them. And I learn a lot because of that. Like we learn a lot when we're helping and coaching and providing a little bit of perspective to help that person a couple of steps behind us. So that's an important role too. It's not, of course, it impacts next generation, and things like that. It makes the world a better place just in general. So it's twofold, but it helps us a lot as the coach, as a teacher. So we got to have three types of people in our life at all times.
And so when we think about the students that we teach, the mentees that we mentor, they push us to learn because they ask us the difficult questions. They don't want to know just how things are done, they want to know why things are done the way that they are. And as the teacher, as the mentor, as the postdoc, as the grad student, whoever you are, you must answer the difficult question. And that's where your mastery and your learning takes place. And it's hard because when they ask you a difficult question and you don't know the answer to it, I think there's a bit of humility that goes into saying, I don't know. Why don't you think on it and let me know? Or maybe it is an opportunity for you to dig through and really inspect what you are teaching to give an answer. And I think Will kind of had a really good point, and he put it in a very beautiful way.
But what's really beautiful about that is, let's say a pupil, a student, or whatever says like, "Why are we doing this?" And then you're like, "You know what? Like, I don't know." You get to restart a lot of that process that's really helpful. Like, let's get back to the drawing board. Let's figure it out. Let's think creatively about this. Then you develop better because of it. And then what also happens is you find out like maybe you didn't need to do that.
I am a big proponent of luck, whether it's dumb luck that just finds you or you making your own luck. And I think that that comes from, you know, having observed successful people and hearing how things happen for successful people. When I think about my own journey through grad school, the scientific discovery happens on accident. Yes, you are showing up, you're being consistent, you're being adaptable, you're in the right environment, you're in the perfect lab. All of the pieces are coming together beautifully. But maybe your experiments aren't working the way that they are supposed to. That serendipity allows you to have your breakthrough in that moment. And it's really an awesome experience. And I know that not everybody believes in luck. I know Will certainly put in his 2 cents about luck.
I think one of the issues with lack of success, one of the drivers of lack of success or failure, or what prevents us a lot of the times, is the idea of luck. I'm not really that big of a believer in luck. I think there's a lot of survivorship bias tied to it. And what I mean by that is it looks like luck when we know how it turned out. You know what I mean? We don't often, I don't care what industry, space, lane, generation, whatever example you want to think of really, really successful, really fulfilled people, you might say, oh, well, yeah, but that's because, such and such. And that is a factual statement. I'm not saying that it didn't happen. But we also don't talk about the people who had very similar circumstances that it did not work out for. When you look at the thousands or millions or however many people, tens, hundreds of people who had similar circumstances and it did not work out, and then you pick the one and you say, "Oh, that's just luck." You're doing yourself personally, not for others. It's a big disservice to yourself because you're not giving enough weight, enough recognition to the work that they put in. Like we mentioned, to say, hey, this really small, teeny tiny 1% change that I worked 1,000 or 10,000 times in a row when it was dark, when it was cold, when I was scared, when I was nervous, to capitalize on that opportunity the one time it showed up when the lights were actually on. And then you look up and you're like, yeah, but so and so just helped them out. That's not what happened. And that's most damaging, I think, to ourselves as the individual, because then we're like, well, I'm not lucky. Why would I start?
And so his perspective on luck and seizing your opportunity when it arrives was really interesting for me and very refreshing as I think about my own perspective on luck. I think I learned a lot from Will. I mean, I'm always learning from Will. I think it was a really rich conversation, and I was very happy to have him on and talk about success. I know that this is something that he's quite passionate about, and he speaks very eloquently about it. And I hope that you all took something from it. And success most of the time is not something that's built overnight. You must be consistent, but you also must adapt to the ever changing environment that you find yourself in. You must show up so that in the moments of serendipity, you are ready to seize your moment. And I know Will may not like this, but sometimes being in the right place at the right time via consistency and adaptability is what allows you to do what you want to do. And finally, your community, the people that build you up when you feel low, the people that will speak your names in rooms that you are not in yet, are just as important. As much as this podcast is about you and being self centered, it is about the people that you build with. And I will catch you on the next episode. Be sure to follow and subscribe on Spotify so that you don't miss any upcoming episodes. And follow us on TikTok and Instagram so you can see all the promo reels and see bloopers of your favorite episodes. And I will catch you next time. Bye.